So there are different types of consumers in every business. And today's episode is all about cultivating a cult-like following with your audience, with your fans, with your clients, with your customers, right? How can we get someone from just buying maybe one thing or watching one video into a raving lunatic of a fan? If you are a raving lunatic of a fan, thank you. I'm a lunatic of a fan right back. So today's episode, I'm bringing on Chris Kneeland. He is a co-founder of the Cult Collective LTD. And in this episode, he's going to be breaking down a ton of great ways that you can create this cult-like following. There's key characteristics that he's studied over the past 25 years in key brands and key demographics. So this episode, I think you're going to really, really enjoy. We're talking all about how to build this type of cult following. And then we're going to talk a little bit about his journey and how masterminds and how groups and communities have been instrumental in Chris's growth as an entrepreneur over the past 2.5 decades. This is the After Hours Entrepreneur. This episode is for you. Go ahead and smash subscribe, leave a 5-star review. Let's get into the episode. Digital marketing is this hot word that we hear so much about, and it is ever changing. And today we are joined by the one and only founder of Cult Collective, Chris Kneeland. And I love Chris's innovative approach to marketing. Chris, what up? How we doing?
I'm doing great, Mark. Happy to be here.
The honor is all mine. And for anyone that's listening to this and not watching on YouTube, Chris has a very dopely designed sweatshirt. So for everyone that doesn't see it, check out YouTube and you can check it out. It's really, listen, I'm a freak for branding and design. I just find it so fascinating, and his sweater encapsulates that. Listen, again, if you're listening, if you're not watching, head over to YouTube, link below to check it out. But Chris, I want to talk about branding. I want to talk about marketing. And let's start by talking a little bit about what you do at Cult Collective or CultIdeascom. How do you rethink marketing? What's different about marketing in your approach?
You know, our genesis was we were a digital marketing agency, which is what my business partner was running. And I was a traditional marketing or advertising agency. And we kind of got together back in 2010 and had a baby, if you will. And this baby was imagining a world where brands were increasingly less dependent on digital marketing and advertising. And in fact, would your dependence upon those crafts be viewed as a sign of weakness or a deficiency with your business as opposed to some sort of asset or competitive advantage? And so what planted that seed in our mind's eye was competing against some of what we now call the most cult-like brands in the world, and being discouraged at how ineffective we were. We had comparable product, we had better sales promotion, we had more clever communications, and yet we couldn't dissuade or steal enough share from their customers. And so, you know, the adage is if you can't beat them, join them. And so we said, boy, there's something happening within these companies that's special and enviable. And we were curious about it. And it started this 10-year journey of trying to decode the secrets of cult brands.
So when we talk about cult brands, I think what you're talking about is kind of this same concept that Pat Flynn talks about in creating super fans, people that are just so excited about every product, every service that you release. They buy it, they listen to it, they share it with their friends, as opposed to the traditional advertising sense of, I'm going to run some Facebook ads, I'm going to run some TV commercials, and we're going to see what sticks. Am I hearing you right?
Yeah, I think super fans would be a decent synonym for a cult-like follower. The idea that businesses should have advocates, not just customers, is not. It's so desirable. I'm just disappointed that more people don't do it. And I think what most people do is they excuse themselves or they excuse their category as, well, our customers just would never get that excited about my tuna fish or our toilet paper or our office copiers or whatever it might be. And I think that the greater sin is to be cult capable and not try to pursue that level of advocacy than to not have that sort of endearing category and to try and fail. Most businesses we talk to are far more cult capable than they've given themselves credit for, which means they're leaving not only a lot of money on the table, but a lot of stimulation and satisfaction and enjoyment, because cult brand marketing is just more fun. It makes you feel better as a marketer.
Well, it definitely resonates with me when you say that kind of like, oh, my fans really wouldn't be into this, or, yeah, they probably wouldn't listen to a podcast. They probably wouldn't watch videos. They probably wouldn't even read my newsletter. I'm not going to do it. And I think that, like you said, you're kind of putting your car on autopilot straight off a cliff, because we live in this new economy. This is like creator engagement economy. Everything is social media and shares and getting collaborations. And I've kind of had this stance, Chris, and I want you to feel free to debunk my hypothesis here if you like. But I have this hypothesis, this belief that every brand, every creator in this new world needs to have some sort of show. You need to have a podcast or a YouTube channel, maybe even an Instagram Live, because I feel like it's a really important way to connect with our fans and potential new clients. What do you think about that? Does every brand need to have a show, or are there potential other options?
Yeah, I don't know. On its surface, that might be a too provocative statement. The every part, I think, the idea of never say never. I don't know that I'd say always say every. I worry. Here's my concern is that when people superficially look at a cult brand, they start to cherry pick some tactics. And they might say, well, that brand's doing, Nike just did this cool thing on Roblox. Maybe I should go onto Roblox, or somebody else is doing this cool thing on TikTok. Now I need to do that. And we end up getting a lot of non-strategic tactics that are just doing it as these copycats. For Red Bull, their live event strategy is gold. But that may not be the same thing that Yeti should be doing, or may not be the same thing that Porsche should be doing. It may not be the same thing that Hot Wheels should do. So I do believe that the better way to maybe answer your question would be is every brand needs to be able to provide more and more levels of engagement for people that want to become more and more engaged. So if there's a, we were doing some work with Burger King back in the day, and I was thinking about their kingdom. Like if you have people that want to advance within the kingdom of Burger King, then you can't just have coupons or just have a loyalty program or just have a good in-store experience. Like, what do you allow people that want to give more? How do they get more? And so that reciprocity of customers that can not just give you their dollar, I think that's the lowest common denominator. So many businesses think that that's where it stops. Let me get somebody to transact. I don't just want their dollar. I want all of the dollars, right? I want them to buy more product more often. I want them to buy at higher and higher price points. I want them to give me more and more feedback. I want them to become lower and easier to serve. I want them to become advocates and champions and give me their word of mouth. And so there's higher and higher degrees of expectations where if that means they want to watch your YouTube channel, or if that means they want to, go like, remember Saturn when people would go back to the factory every year with their car? Like who does that? Like go back to see where your car was born, but they made that work, right? And so that's where we try to say, for you, it may be social content. For you, it may be an in-store experience. For you, it may be some sort of direct mail club. I don't really know what the answer is, but the idea is always have something more. Never let your customers run out of ways to engage with you.
And so when we talk about engagement, obviously there's different ways that people can engage. They can go home for their Thanksgiving dinner and tell someone about the great pair of headphones that they bought, for example. I'd like to hear from you, Chris, how you define customer engagement, because generally in the social media world and the podcasting, digital media world, we think of engagement as someone liked my post, or they left a comment. Maybe they shared it on their story or something like that. Is that what you mean by engagement with your consumers? Or are you talking about something a little bit more abstract, a little bit more nuanced?
Yeah, I mean, one of our problems is that the definition of engagement turns into something that like PhD statisticians start to understand. So it's too nuanced for the everyday man. I mean, what you mentioned are indicators of engagement, but at the end of the day, the way that you actually measure engagement, and it's actually one of the fights that we have, is that people have this false sense of security that Net Promoter Score is the best indicator of engagement. And it's not. It's the best it's an indicator of satisfaction, but in its simplicity, where people just want things to be easy, asking one question has sort of trumped all of the real nuance of engagement. But engagement deals with the emotional connection that people feel for your category in relation to how well you're meeting their expectations versus the competitive alternatives. So that's a mouthful, right? But you start to break that down, and you start to look at something about my expectations for an e-commerce platform is different than my grocery store, is different than my music, app, which is different than my childcare provider.
Right.
So you can't do blanket levels of engagement. Now, one of the challenges we have is when people like Amazon make it so easy, then that raises expectations for all of the categories, right? So you look at somebody like a Carvana now that says, like, why does buying a car have to be so distasteful when buying a mattress on Amazon is so easy? So one category can certainly shift people's expectations across different categories. But then you get into this idea of in comparison to the competitive set, right? So I may have certain hopes or expectations, but all I need you to do is be better than the next best alternative. Because if you're not, I'm just going to go with the cheapest or the easiest. And everybody has to make a decision. How are you going to compete? You've really only, in my mind, you only have 4 choices. You could be the cheapest, you could be the most convenient, you could be the most innovative, or you could be the most cult-like. And all of them have pros and cons, and all of them have a discrete playbook with which you can proceed. I think cheapest and most convenient is a fool's errand unless you're Walmart or Amazon or have some sort of operational or scale advantage. Probably most of your listeners don't, right? Particularly the newer, smaller you are, that you're bringing a knife to a gunfight if you're trying to be the cheapest or the most operationally efficient. Now, you could become the most innovative. That's what Tesla did. I mean, Tesla dethroned the automotive industry by just bringing something to the market that nobody had ever seen before. But innovation is hard. Innovation, BlackBerry was the most innovative company 10 years ago, and they're gone today. And so you have to be careful to know that innovation is a huge investment in R&D, or just be the most cult-like, which means I'm going to cater to my tribe of customers better than anybody else. I find that one the most rewarding and oftentimes the path of least resistance.
Great summary here, Chris. So I want to talk a little bit more about this idea of cult-like, creating a cult-like fan base or customer base. And one of the stories or books I've recently been reading is called Story Brand by Donald Miller. And I kind of think of this concept because, as you mentioned, Tim, you can't just add a YouTube channel and all of a sudden we've got a cult-like following. There's more nuance than that. You kind of have to bring together the Burger King and the kingdom. And how do you bring that together? This kind of cohesive feel across and brands put in tons and tons of money, millions of dollars into determining what color their logo should be, right? So there's a lot of nuance that goes across this. But one of the things I've been thinking about, kind of bring this question full circle here, Chris, is on the concept of story and telling a story that really gets people interested and involved. And I'm kind of curious, in your experience studying brands, how important is the story to creating a cult-like following? How important is it?
It's pretty important. I mean, so we've actually found there's 8 attributes that cult brands excel at that their mediocre peers don't excel at. Story is not one of them, but story is found within 2, maybe 3. So certainly this idea of brand purpose is one of the attributes, and why you exist can be manifest through story, particularly good origin stories. Like I love Southwest Airlines' origin story, where it was trying to democratize the skies and make it easy for a middle-income family of 5 to get to grandma's house without, having to spend 2 days in the family station wagon to drive there, right? So it was very much this defender of the little guy, and let's make air, travel not something that only rich or elite people can take advantage of. There's one of the principles is called picking a fight. Story has great villains. The reason why people say Marvel is better than DC is it's not because Iron Man is a better hero than Superman. It's because Marvel has better bad guys, and that DC doesn't spend as much time. If you look at the whole Avengers Infinity War thing, like Thanos had his own movie. Like it was a movie about bad guys. It's actually, I think, one of the reasons why Eternals didn't do as well is they didn't create the villain as well as they had matured in other stories. So, one way to demonstrate who you are fighting is through story. And then there's this idea of being relatable, which is another cult brand principle. Is how do you stop being this faceless corporate, behemoth and become somebody like, I love the I'm a Mac, you're a PC. That was Apple personifying who they are, the cool, hip Justin Long character, versus Microsoft's nameless. They didn't say Windows, they didn't say Bill Gates, but we all knew it was kind of that frumpy, nerdy accountant kind of a guy, right? So that was them being relatable. That was them demonstrating they're picking a fight, us versus them. And so a story becomes a powerful communicator of that. And certainly cult brands spend more energy talking about what they stand for than what they sell. So if all of your advertising real estate is price and item and discount, where's the story? Like on the About Us page buried in the footer of your website, that's never going to work. Versus the Patagonias of the world, the Ben and Jerry's of the world, the Chobani's of the world, the Porsches of their story is their brand. If there's a discount or a promo, you have to go try to find it because they're so busy telling you the bigger picture.
Yeah, I think of Tom's too. Tom's is about, I buy a pair of shoes. Someone overseas gets a pair of shoes. In that, I hate to, I'm loath to use the word activism, but that's another thing that you're seeing factored into a lot of brands now. I think about, all the different ways that brands are trying to switch up their messaging to reach different psychographics and different demographics. Now, so you mentioned, Chris, that there's 8 different attributes that you attribute to cult-like brands. You mentioned a few of them. I love them. Where can I get the rest? Because I want to know more about these 8.
They're at our website, CultIdeascom. We've also written a book where we expound upon them. We also host classes every month where people can, for like $200, you can come and take a workshop to understand them. I mean, our goal is not to make these secretive. We go on every podcast that will have us, Mark. We host a big event every spring called The Gathering. We were as excited and surprised by them as anybody. Like I said, we changed our careers. We stopped our advertising and our digital marketing practices to say, this is what good looks like. Let's just devote our best selves to letting the world know that if you can just do these 8 things, you're going to have tremendous competitive advantage, at least until everybody's perfected them. Then we might have to find the other 8 things. But, there's just so many good examples of, how does Lego transcend? How does the LA Lakers transcend? How does Lululemon transcend? And sometimes I get surprised and even disappointed that more people aren't curious to understand what are they doing? And more importantly, could I do it too? Yeah. Are those principles applicable to my business, my sector, my culture, et cetera?
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. I think, at least for the battles that I'm going through on a day-to-day basis, I'm very interested in what these big brands are doing, but I'm more interested in what can I do? How can I build my brand? How can I develop a cult following, right? Your company, Cult Collective, is basically a marketing agency, right? Consulting agency, right? And so I'm kind of more interested to learn a little bit more about what you're doing, Chris, to build up the cult following, right? So you mentioned that, I assume this is an annual event you put on in April called The Gathering, where you help create a big event where you can bring people together. You mentioned that it's really important to you that you're guesting on lots of podcasts. That's a priority for building that cult collective. But how are you bringing it all together to create this cult-like following for your business and for your marketing agency? Like, help me bring it together in something that seems cohesive as opposed to just randomly scattered marketing ideas.
Yeah, we certainly try to practice what we preach. We don't think that as B2B business advisors or consultants that we're somehow exempt from these 8 cult brand principles. Even the idea of cult is our attempt to become relatable. We're not McKinsey or Bain or, Foster and Foster. We're not people's names. Like, we're trying to demonstrate through the relatability of a cult. Now, admittedly, most cults are bad things. We're trying to say, but aren't you curious? How do well-educated, highly affluent, well integrated into society people join cults? And there are lots of them. I don't know if you've ever heard of the website Meetup, but there's people that hang out thinking they're vampires. There's people that think that they're that they have weird fetishes. There's people that have really interesting hyper niche. I mean, think of Comic-Con. How many people are dressing up as superheroes and going and pretending to be or dressing up and camping out to go see the next Star Wars? I mean, these people are among us. They're not these, sometimes these cults get branded as these freak outsiders. It's like, no, your CFO may be a Trekkie. Your CEO may be a Grateful Dead guy that goes on tour with the team, with the band for 6 weeks, right? Like people have these rational people have irrational affinities. And we want to tap into that psychology of what's happening in their brain and what's happening with that interaction that could be exploited, that can be replicated, that can be cloned across a variety of different industries. So we really boil our services, Mark, down to 3 things. One is inspiration. I don't think enough business leaders even know what good looks like. They're so busy looking sideways at what their competitors are doing. They're not looking out at so I don't care if it's Levi's and I'm in the die cast business. I can learn. Just because Levi's is a multi-billion-dollar success story doesn't mean there's not some principle there that I can apply to my own business. You just need a little bit of imagination. And no cult brand started a cult brand. Apple had to get there. Starbucks had to get there, right? And so that journey, I think, is worthy of our study. So we do, a bunch of our calories are spent trying to inspire people through speeches and through workshops and through the events that we host. The next part is the know-how. What are those 8 principles? How can they be applied to your business? And then the third part is what we call courage. But, Mark, you think about everybody kind of knows how to lose weight. Losing weight is not the hard part, the knowledge part. It's doing it is the hard part, right? It's like I need to stop eating donuts and I need to go to the gym more often. And so the courage part is almost more like we act as a personal trainer, if you will. We give you that motivation that you need every day to get up and go to the gym so that you don't give up on yourself, because striving is always going to be harder than settling. And we don't want people to settle for mediocrity. We want people to strive for excellence. And so we spend a lot of time just on that sort of hand holding to make sure that you don't give up on the playbook when you run into a few bumps.
Awesome. And I got to say, I love the branding across everything that you're doing. The cult, I like how you break it down to inspiration, know-how, courage. Very well done. Very professionally executed. And I guess I should expect that after 10 plus years in the business. I do want to ask you a little bit about membership, though, and groups and community, because when I think of cults, another key aspect is lots of people feeding off one another, right? It's amazing what happens when you get human beings together, all excited about a certain thing. You see Facebook really leaning in to Facebook groups. Do you think it's a necessity for a business or a brand to have a central place or a central group meetup place where they can develop that cult-like following? Is that a key component also?
Yeah. So one of the 8 cult brand principles is called congregate, creating opportunities for your fans to get together and revel in their togetherness. It doesn't always have to be physical. More interestingly, Mark, it doesn't always have to be brand initiated. You look at something like Sturgis that happens in South Dakota with the largest motorcycle rally in the world. Harley did not create that event. Harley exploits that event. Harley attends. They show up with the beer and the pizza, and they make an existing party cooler. Versus something like Salesforce that created Dreamforce, where I think over 100,000 people now are basically paying a few $1,000s for a week-long Salesforce commercial. Wow, that's what it is. Think about the mental jujitsu that happened. Like Salesforce went from paying millions of dollars to go to other people's conferences and trade shows to now being paid millions of dollars to have a conference and a trade show. So there is something absolutely important. That's why we call the gathering. To get people to gather is critical for heightened levels of fan adoration. But I think there's a lot of opportunity. It's why you see a lot of brands like beer brands or beverage brands getting into music festivals. As an example, it's a chance for people to congregate and to share their love of some shared values, but not necessarily, they're not gathering because they love Coke. They're demonstrating appreciation that Coke has brought their favorite artists onto the main stage.
Yeah, which historically has been done by being the sponsor of the event, but now brands are just kind of in it. It's hard sometimes to determine where a brand stops and where the artist or the creator or the innovator begins. They're kind of meshed together. Chris, I don't want to completely shift topics here. I know we've only got you for a couple more minutes, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about something I've been thinking about a lot recently. And this has to do with entrepreneurship in general. You've been building a business for a long time. You're still here. You're still living it. He who fails the most time wins, as I like to say. So I have an immense amount of respect for people that have been doing it for as long as you have. I got to ask, because this is something that's been on my radar recently. Have you been part of a mentorship mastermind community, some sort of community that's really helped you to level up your game, stay accountable? This has been something I've noted with a lot of the after hours entrepreneurs that join the show. Is that something you've been a part of?
Yeah, two thoughts on that. First, I have a business partner who is my polar opposite, literally the yin to my yang. And I remember when we started this, I said, if we're going to be successful, it's going to be that we stay together despite our extreme differences. Because your natural instinct would be to try to find somebody that you are the most similar with, like
Right.
go into business with your best friend. And we had enough I think discipline and insight to understand what we need is compliments.
Yeah.
You're, somebody that's whose strengths are my weaknesses. So I really don't advise solo entrepreneurship. I think that finding a partner is going to increase your odds of success. And then, I think I also underestimated in the early days the difficulty. I was an employee. Like I grew up thinking my dream job was to be the CMO of a Fortune 100 company. I was kind of bred to believe that employeeship was the path of, it was at least my path, maybe not the path of least resistance. And when I was exposed to entrepreneurship and decided to make the plunge into entrepreneurship, I underestimated that as a discipline, as a craft, as a skill.
Yeah.
And so I needed to learn it. You don't learn entrepreneurship very well in MBA programs, as an example. So my business partner and I joined a group called Strategic Coach. They have programs in Chicago and Toronto, and it puts you together with 50 other entrepreneurs of similar sized but non-competitive businesses. Mm-hmm. And it's a great network and a lot of advice about how to help keep an entrepreneur focused and motivated, and what are the KPIs for success. It's been very, very valuable.
Fantastic. Yet again, another awesome after hours entrepreneur that's been part of some sort of membership mastermind community that has helped to really level up success. Again, something I've been thinking about a lot because I've kind of toyed with the idea and joined some communities. I haven't found the right one, but as I speak to more and more creators, entrepreneurs that have it, it's starting to become clear that has to be a primary goal for 2022. Speaking of which, if you're watching, if you're listening right now, I want you to go ahead and leave a comment, drop a comment, and let us know if you've been part of a mastermind community. We'd love to hear from you. Chris, before I let you go, I do want to just kind of open up and learn a little bit more about this event that you're holding in April of 2022, The Gathering.
Yeah, thank you. We're back this year in person. Let's hope this what's being dubbed the South African variant doesn't derail yet another year of in-person events. But we gather at this 150-year-old castle nestled deep in the Canadian Rockies. We've historically done it in the dead of winter in February. It's now in April. But it's intentionally exclusive and inconvenient to get to because we really want people to make the pilgrimage who are committed to improving themselves. And it's grown from a few hundred to now a few thousand brand leaders show up there. Lots of small business owners, lots of what we like to say curious business leaders seeking enlightenment, right? You have to have a certain degree of humility to say, maybe I don't know everything. Maybe there's something to be learned from the world's most iconic cult-like brands. This year, brand leaders from McDonald's and TikTok and Call of Duty, the video game, and Big Brothers Big Sisters, the nonprofit. Noble, which is an up-and-coming apparel brand, and Chobani, the yogurt brand, which I think has got one of the most enviable corporate cultures on the planet. So these brand leaders come and share their tales. You're sort of sequestered in this castle, so there's a feeling of camaraderie. And you mentioned mentorship and partnership. It's like what I don't like about events in Orlando or Vegas or New York is everybody's quickly looking to leave so they can go to a show or go to a restaurant or go experience. This is like, no, you're coming to learn, and you're checking your ego at the door, and you're acknowledging your own, weaknesses and aspirations. And it's very, very special. I haven't been a part of anything like it in my 25-year career. And I'm thrilled with what the team has done to bring it back this year after a year of going virtual. And the brands that are going to be represented this year are amazing.
It sounds really, really cool, Chris. Props again for everything that you've built at CultIdeascom. Everyone, you definitely want to check out what Chris is doing. And we just, honestly, I felt like we had gone for 3 hours on all these brands. Thanks for sharing some tidbits of knowledge. And we will catch you here next time on the After Hours Entrepreneur. I
really appreciate the time. Thanks, Mark.
Yo, thanks so much for watching, YouTube. I know you are going to go out and crush it and find some awesome clients and raving fans. Listen, if you enjoyed this episode, I've got another episode right here that's going to be right up your alley. We've custom clicked it. We're leveraging the YouTube algorithm. Click the link, watch the video, and go explode your business. See ya.